Hello and welcome to the Astrological Podcast. The Astrological Commission Podcast. My name is Issachar Bey, and I am excited about our guest today. I would say maybe about 15 years or more. I was first introduced to him through my teacher, a gentleman by the name of Dave Young. And he always taught me the importance of looking at the chart from a psychological aspect. And he began to teach me the methods of our guest today. And I think that it's very imperative, and I'm really excited about talking to this gentleman because he has had some great accomplishments, and I think that his insight into astrology has been profound. And so we're honored to have none other than Mr. Greg Bogart. How you doing, sir?
Hi there. Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much, sir. Greg, what was your first introduction into astrology?
My first introduction was in Ganeshpuri, India, where I met Chakrapani Ulal, the great Vedic astrologer, and I went to Bombay to have a reading from him, which was phenomenal, so insightful. Then about 2 years later, I was a little bit lost. I had transiting Neptune conjunct my natal Saturn, and I was going through a period of hitchhiking around without work and just sort of wandering. And it was in Eugene, Oregon that I had my chart done again and began studying several books and looking at my chart, contemplating it, trying to connect it to my own personal experience, what was happening to me. And so it was in working my way through a period of some chaos and uncertainty, and then following the steps that my birth chart indicated that I began discovering astrology. And soon thereafter, I became interested in sidereal astrology, and I synchronistically met a Venezuelan sidereal astrologer named Andres Takra and became his apprentice for 9 months, during which time I ghost wrote his book, The Wisdom of Sidereal Astrology. And that was what really launched me. And just reading the books of the greats and trying to apply it to help my friends and eventually clients. That's how I was introduced to astrology.
Oh, man, that's amazing. And so from there, being with the Venezuelan astrologer, ghostwriting his book and so forth, what shifted you to get into psychological astrology, or were there any teachers, were there anybody that from that point on that you connected with that kind of took your journey a little further?
Absolutely. I mean, there were different stages of this. I had a period where I was studying esoteric astrology with a wonderful woman named Pat Stauffer in Boulder. But I got very interested in Rujar's work and the philosophy of cyclical development and the more humanistic approach to astrology. I began corresponding with Rujar in 1983 until he passed in 1985. And so I sort of shifted back into tropical astrology, and I was very interested in dreams and inner work. You know, I was a big reader of Jung and von Franz and Edward Edinger back in my 20s, and James Hillman. And so I was interested in the idea of astrology as a path of inner work and self-transformation. And certainly I was interested in all the predictive methodologies and accuracy of astrology, but I began to realize that a lot of the meaning of it depended on our ability to work through different challenges indicated by transits. The transits weren't things that just happened to me. They were indicating processes that I needed to engage with, so that rather than dreading Saturn transits, I realized that it was a message to get to work and try to accomplish certain tangible goals. So my astrology became more grounded in that attitude. Then what happened was I was working with clients and realized I was over my head in certain areas. Clients would bring up issues I didn't have any understanding of or ability to help them with. And so I realized I needed to get more training to be a counselor and to do therapy. So I embarked on that training in 1986 at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. And that led me into a professional development where astrology and psychotherapy were hand in hand. They worked together. And it took off from there as I learned from each person, each client, each chart, more of the deeper significance of astrological symbols.
And so, what if somebody wanted to define? What would you define as? I would say astro psychotherapy. Like, what would you define that as?
Well, the first thing is that it involves working over a period of time, over a series of sessions, rather than just a single session. Secondly, it involves a dialogical interpretive process. Rather than making pronouncements about a chart, engaging in dialogue to understand the level at which the chart is activated and resonating, and to facilitate change over time, to facilitate working through of specific tasks. And so I think that's one of the things that distinguishes more therapeutic astrology, also a greater emotional centering of the work, a greater understanding of the nuances of the moon, for example, as a symbol of attachment or attachment style. And that understanding comes from attachment theory and developmental psychology. So I think that the psychological theories enhance astrology's effectiveness, enhances our ability to relate planetary activity to developmental stages that are, it's very helpful to people in that regard. So I think understanding of family dynamics is another aspect of it. So, for example, the fourth house has the whole meaning of the family system, the ancestral intergenerational issues we carry into this life. There's just so many facets of it. The 12th house, for example, instead of being sort of the dumping ground of the birth chart, becomes this lively area of the unconscious that Jung was so brilliant in describing, so that the periods of transits through the 12th house are not just periods of seclusion or retreat or hospitalization or something like that, but they are also involving introspection, introversion, interior process, working with dreams, working with meditation, connecting with that field of consciousness beyond just the individual personality. So I think the timing methods of astrology are a great aid to therapy. In other words, astrology has so much to contribute to the field of mental health, counseling, and it brings awareness of particular transformational processes, archetypes that are operative at a particular moment. So it gives focus to counseling. Therapy doesn't have to be this endless process. It has tremendous focus, and we follow the transits in examining where the individual is trying to evolve, trying to grow, and what are the current areas of greatest emphasis. So to me, the marriage of astrology and psychotherapy. It's made in heaven. It's the therapy of the future. And I'm especially interested in looking at connections between dream symbolism and planetary symbolism. I talk about this quite a lot in two books. One is called Astrology's Higher Octaves, and also in the later book called Astrology as a Therapeutic Art. So that's a few thoughts on how the two are connected. We take a psychological orientation to astrology to mean that the planets are representations of interior functions, things that are happening inside us. Yes, they refer to situations and circumstances, people we encounter, the outer details of life, but they also point to developing these faculties of consciousness and gradually opening them up in the way that is indicated by our own personal birth map.
And, I find that very fascinating when the chart has so many different layers, and when you look at it from your lens, looking at the psyche and getting into, the psychodynamics of a person, the family structure, the ways of thinking and the issues that they come to you with, you're able to look at it from that perspective. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is that we're living in a season now in this particular day and time where mental health has become extremely popular, and has really come to forefront. Usually, people would not be so open to say, "Oh, I'm going to see somebody because I have mental health issues," or whatever the case may be. But now I see that mental health has become something that's very pronounced, very profound at this moment. Have you seen a rise in your astrological practice with the mental health clients?
With the mental health clients? Well, I think a lot of people are looking for ways to feel more uplifted and more hopeful and to get relief from depression and anxiety, which are very pervasive. And I think astrology provides one of the natural methods, if you will, that are effective in relieving stress and anxiety, coupled with lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, meditation, different practices. But I think people are looking for some alternatives to the pharmaceutical approach to therapy, and astrology coupled with other spiritual practices can be part of the therapy of the future. Have I seen an increase? Yes. I think that there's major stressors in our environment, and therapy has become a kind of our cultural rite of passage, and an acceptable avenue for people to unfold themselves, to reveal themselves, to disclose themselves to another person, and discover themselves in a healing atmosphere.
When I hear the words astrology as a therapeutic art, I think that's so beautiful. Could you elaborate on that and explain to us how you're able to take astrology, the science, this great science that we have, and begin to align it with therapy in order to it to blend together and create this great art? Because I think that astrology as a therapeutic art is something that's very, very needed, I believe, in this day and time. And you don't really see that many people really moving in that lane. So I think that, what you're doing is so important. It's extremely important because I believe that it's really something that is well needed as we speak now with all of the, like you said, the depression, the anxieties, all the things going on in the world. Dealing with people's personal issues, family dynamics. To look at astrology as a therapeutic art, I think it's absolutely phenomenal.
Well, the thing is, every astrologer has their own personal pattern of development, their own inclination. So I'm not saying that this is for everyone. People are in the financial field, people who work in politics, they use astrology and apply it to that. They apply it to their business lives. They apply it in artistic pursuits. For me, the moon is important in my chart. So I have this interest in emotional connection, empathizing, and helping reorganize people's emotional experience. So I got trained in counseling psychology and apply its models of human development, psychopathology, understanding what are the typical tasks and phases that people deal with across the lifespan. That map, that model, those models of lifespan development correlate beautifully with planetary cycles. And so, you ask, how did I do it? Basically, I got the training in that field of psychotherapy, mental health counseling, and the astrology guides how I approach that. That someone else will want to do something else with their astrology, apply it to stock trading, or apply it to real estate, or apply it to medicine and medical astrology. This is what I've chosen to do. And Jung talked about individuation, the process of unfolding our uniqueness, walking the path that is for us, that is the unique unfoldment of our potentials. And astrology is the map, the roadmap of individuation. So while we have common challenges, we all have different Mars or Saturn transits to deal with in life. We have a roadmap for how to direct those energies, how to direct our effort in the realm of work, for example, with transiting and natal Saturn.
And so,
I lost the thread of your question there. So,
so what I wanted to know also is because you've studied, like you said, the psychodynamics and the mental health. When you're looking at a chart and you see certain planetary configurations, maybe, of course, you're looking at any aspects to the ascendant, maybe to the Lord of the 10th or the 4th, maybe to the moon or the house that the moon rules. When you look at certain planetary configurations, and I'm pretty sure of all the charts that you've seen, you are able to automatically probably kind of get an idea of what maybe the psychodynamics is of this person. Like, for instance, what are some of the planetary configurations that you've seen that may show that this person is encountering depression or having some kind of mental stability issues in their life, or in this particular time that they're coming to see you as a client?
Well, first of all, I don't think I can identify that just from the chart. The person will express that they're having some distress in a particular realm of life. Certainly, aspects involving Saturn and Pluto, such as a transit of Pluto conjunct or square or opposing Saturn, often correspond to times of some adversity or challenge. But really, there's such a wide range of symbolism or astrological transits that can indicate those kinds of struggles. It would be hard to really generalize. Sometimes you'll see someone with a moon connection to Saturn, or Saturn and Neptune, and you might infer that perhaps the person struggles with their mood. On the other hand, people can live it on a high level of emotional maturity and not experience depression at all with a Moon-Saturn conjunction. This might be a very serious and responsible person but untroubled by depression. So I don't try to diagnose or make assumptions just based on the chart. I like to engage in a dialogue, and I'll ask a person, how is this area of your life going? How is it operating? And if there are aspects involving Mars, there might be interpersonal stress, anger, discord. For example, Mars in the 4th house being transited. But I rely on dialogue. I really I let the astrology unfold through a human conversation. I don't pretend to be psychic or highly intuitive. And so what are some of the other indicators of those kinds of problems? It can be so varied. It can involve a contact between Pluto and the Sun. The person might feel insulted or a lack of acknowledgement that is causing them a lot of upset and internal conflict. There's just so many things. Neptune transits to Venus. There might be a romantic disappointment, an idealization that turns out to not be realistic.
And do you use like anything else? Do you use like progressions? Do you use lunations? Like what other things do you use to look at? Do you that you use in your your repertoire?
My repertoire is very focused to detailed analysis of transits involving, including the transits of Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and the Sun, and lunations. I use secondary progressions and solar arc directions. And for my own chart or the chart of people that I work with, really a lot over time, I'll use midpoints. Specifically, contacts of transiting outer planets, especially planetary stations, to the midpoint sort, or solar arcs to midpoints, the progressed Sun especially. And so I've stopped using solar returns and lunar returns entirely. I use a few asteroids, but not a great number of asteroids. So my practice is kind of meat and potatoes in that way. I just think that all the information we need is available in those methods. I personally use minor progressions and tertiary progressions to look at the minutia of what's going on for me personally, but I rarely do that with clients. So much information is available if you just read the transits and progressions carefully. Thinking about the upcoming presidential election just for a moment, you'll notice that Kamala Harris has progressed Sun sextile Saturn at the midheaven for the next several years. That's a very telling progressed aspect. I think it's hopeful for her prospects. So I look at the progressed Sun quite a lot. I track the progressed Sun's aspects, the lunation cycle in the progressed chart, and you get a ton of information from that. But those are the methods that I employ at this time. I've dropped a lot of other methods that I've formerly used. I was very devoted to solar and lunar returns in the past, but now I find that the other methods are just more informative for me.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And with the solar arcs, like you say, you're using the solar arcs and midpoints. I'm a Uranian, so I definitely, I love what you're using midpoints and solar arcs, and I think that's very interesting. One of the things that I love what you said was that you said that when a person comes to you, it's not just a one-time situation. It's kind of like we're going to be continuing on this journey. How do you include packages, or how does your
No, I mean,
practice work?
This is not to say that I don't do a lot of one-time consultations. I often do one-time consultations, and no, I've never put together any kind of a package. But let's just say it's a single session. I still try to bring a therapeutic approach to it. In other words, what can we do to make the situation better? How can we embrace the tasks? I track the transit of Saturn meticulously, and the house placement of natal Saturn and transiting Saturn. You can do a whole reading just on that. If you really dig into what is going on, what are the personal challenges, what are the tasks that must be completed within a certain period of time to be on schedule. So it varies. Some people, it's only one time, but I still try to bring a more psychological understanding to the chart instead of thinking what is going to happen to me, which is how people typically approach astrologers and astrology's readings. I think about how can I bring my consciousness to involvement with what is trying to happen. What does the universe intend? What is the universe trying to unfold through this Uranus transit or Jupiter transit? And this I find most helpful. And in terms of the midpoints and such that you mentioned, I use not only just the midpoints, but I use the understanding of aspects from cosmobiology. So I use a lot of, I use the semi-square and the sesquare more than many astrologers do. Many astrologers don't look at the 45-degree or 135-degree aspects, but from cosmobiology and probably Uranian astrology, we know that these aspects are just as important as a square or an opposition and resonate strongly. So in my transit analysis, I'm looking at those aspects carefully, and in terms of contacts of solar arc planets to the natal chart.
It's interesting. Tell me a little bit about your book, Astrology and the Spiritual Awakening.
Oh, I'd love to talk about that book. Well, that was my first book. And this book was evolved over many years. Between 1986 and 1992, I taught a series of classes, typically to 1, 2, or 3 people. These were large classes. But I taped all of these classes, and I began doing a series of astrological biographies. And I was especially interested in spiritual teachers and mystics, and literary figures and people whose lives interested me a great deal. So I began doing these very in-depth analyses of their life in the light of their birth chart and transits. So that was the origin of the book. And I self-published this book 30 years ago in 1994. I took out a small loan and published the book myself. Sold out 3 printings. That was wonderful. And 20 years later, I had the opportunity to put out a revised and expanded second edition from AFA Books. And the book was greatly expanded to unfold the understanding of humanistic and transpersonal astrology, and really the transition from the traditional astrology, which is brilliant and focuses more on prediction. And I took an approach that was saying everything in the chart is about spiritual development of one kind or another. It's just a matter of looking at our whole lives as a spiritual practice, whether it's gardening, taking care of children or pets, cooking, doing the domestic activities that we all must enjoy, hopefully, and creativity and career. Everything in the chart is a yoga. So I developed the idea of the 12 yogas of the zodiac, and looking at each zodiacal sign as an evolutionary phase, a particular kind of energy unfoldment, and also certain kinds of human activities that can be approached as a spiritual practice, not just yogic postures or meditation or pranayama or Sufi practices, but every facet of our lives, from the workplace to our shared conversations about money, trust, and agreements. That's a form of interpersonal yoga, dealing with our finances and health consciousness and health transformation. So that book is very dear to me, and has a lot of discussion of Rudyard. Several of my books, that book and the book Planets in Therapy, really are based off of Dane Rudyard's philosophy, and try to take that in new directions of my own. So Planets, Astrology and Spiritual Awakening, I really recommend, and it does have these very in-depth astrobiographies of some great personalities, people who accomplished great things. And one of the things we learn from doing these astrological biographies is the people that we admire the most, the people who become famous, the people who have highly developed human accomplishments, they're just like us. They went through the same transits, the same challenges, the same conflicts, the same stresses, the same upheavals. It's just a matter of how they landed on their feet, how they managed to transform through different adversities, different sufferings. And so I find that the study of their lives is just inspirational.
Yeah, and one of my favorite books that I have is The Planets in Therapy, and that was like one of my first books that I got of your work. And it's a very great read. It's very good. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, but also within the dynamics of therapeutic astrology, and we talk about forecasting and predicting. How would you? And I guess, like you said, it's because of the dialogue. So you're dialoguing with a client, and you are doing your therapeutic session, but in that you also are bringing in the ability to predict or to forecast. Talk a little bit about that within the scheme of the book, because this is one of my favorite books, Planets in Therapy.
Thank you. Well, the original text was titled Therapeutic Astrology. It was published in 1996 with Uranus entering Aquarius. And that book was later totally transformed into the book Planets in Therapy in 2012.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, the one you're talking about that was published in 1996, it was like a green cover. Uh-huh. I have that one. Yeah, I have the one from 96. Yeah. So I have one of those before you switched it over. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good book.
So in Planets in Therapy, I try to map out how I approach the houses, the signs, the planets, as relating to different parts of therapeutic process, psychological change, and practical issues that people are concerned with, such as sibling issues in the third house, or membership in groups, group activity, activism, and so forth in the 11th house, or being part of a work team in the 11th house. And so, I'm sorry, your question about the book was?
Yeah, so I was asking about, within Planets in Therapy, you're doing the dialogue, you're doing your therapeutic thing with the client, but at the same time, you're also implementing in prediction and forecasting.
Yep.
And so I wanted to know, on a therapeutic basis, how were you able to incorporate the prediction and forecasting in with the therapeutic dialogue between you and the client?
Sure. Well, the timing methods of astrology indicate types of experiences that are likely to happen at a given time. So with our predictive methods, we form anticipation. We're on the crest of the wave, and we're trying to unfold whatever wants to happen through that transit. We don't say this is definitely going to happen in a very definitive way. We say this is the type of thing that wants to happen at such a time, and then it's up to us what we do with it. How does our consciousness, our involvement in the process, transform it? And oftentimes the transits that we are the most dreading, the things that we think of are malefic influences or somehow daunting. We learn that we can pass through those phases and not much really happens if we're cooperating with the process. So I definitely incorporate those forecasting methods, but not in the sense of just this is going to happen this year, but this is where your attention is deployed, and these are the demands on you of certain transits or progressed aspects, and let's try to evolve the highest potentials of it. It involves not just dialogue with the client, but dialogue with the planets. What does Mars want in my body, in my life? How is Mercury stimulating interests in learning, in recounting, and using my communication skills? So we constantly utilize the predictive perspective that astrology provides, but with the understanding that it's up to us to capitalize on those potentials, on those opportunities, to not let them just pass, not just wait till something is over. That's what is most challenging in working with clients in astrology, is people who are just saying, I got to wait until this is over, before I do this, before I do something. Now, that's not to say we don't develop patience. I mean, there is wisdom in waiting for an opportune moment to pursue a particular pathway. But typically it means there's something else that is occupying us at this moment. And it's not just a matter of hiding out until the Saturn transit or the Pluto transit is over. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Definitely, yes. You said that you don't use the solar return or the lunations anymore.
Lunar returns? I use lunations, definitely, but not lunar returns.
And you don't use the solar returns. So in predictive astrology or forecasting, what exactly do you look at?
Solar arcs, transits in depth, and progressions. You can do a whole reading just from the progressed moon. Look at the progressed moon sign, house, and aspects. That will tell you so much of what is going on at a given time. The reason I don't use the solar and lunar returns is I don't believe that one chart describes a whole year. I've studied solar returns for 42 years. I have files. I mean, I do my solar return every year. I do a precession-corrected solar return, which is equivalent to a sidereal solar return, because I think that's more accurate. But honestly, what I've discovered is studying transits in detail gives me a lot more information about my year than just a solar return. But this is a matter of personal preference. Astrology is so vast. Each practitioner can find the methods they gravitate to that work for them. This is just what I find. I get so much just from those transits of Mercury and Mars. It's not only the outer planets that influence, the course of our lives.
So with Mercury, so looking at the Mercury transit, you're looking at where Mercury transits to, and then you're also looking at what transits to the natal Mercury as well?
Yes, both. But what I was maybe referring to here is the transits of Mercury, especially the Mercury alignments with the Sun. As Mercury goes retrograde, comes into conjunction with the Sun, and then goes direct as Mercury catches up to the Sun. So those periods bring heightened focus of attention in a particular realm of life. Like I have Mercury transiting in my 11th house right now, Mercury retrograde. I've been riveted to news coverage in a way that I haven't been in a long time. And, following the course of different conflicts and elections and so forth. So it shows the focus of attention at a given time, and especially the conjunctions to the Sun in different houses and signs. So I've written about this a lot and track it constantly. And so, there's just infinite things to track, looking at out-of-bounds planets during certain phases, the cycles of Jupiter and Saturn. These are all matters that occupy my attention in trying to forecast. But it's really about anticipation and taking proactive measures so that we're responding to the universe, we're responding to the call, we're responding to what the universe wants to happen at a given time. And maybe that's to exert ourselves strenuously in a particular zone, or maybe it's to be very serene if there's something going on involving Neptune, to tolerate periods where we're alone, if our 12th house is lit up at a given time, to not freak out if we're feeling isolated or hidden. So these are a few ways that I incorporate forecasting with the psychological work.
Yeah, and I do believe that in the psychodynamics of astrology, as we said, astrology as a therapeutic art. It's an art, and you being able to dissect it and be able to give the client clarity, give them to say, okay, well, you're telling me this is what your issue is, and let's look and see what we can, do to help you in your situation, to bring clarity, to identify the issue, and then also some of the things that we can do to maybe give you relief or allow you to make the adjustments that need to be made to get the outcome that you were looking for. And so I think that it's imperative, to really look at it from that perspective. And I think that, when we look in this world today, that we have so many things going on. And as I said, the rise of the mental health phenomenon. And when I say that, I mean even in the African-American side, you see mental health being a big thing now. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody is, even now people are like leaving memes on social media saying, oh, today I have a mental health day. I'm going to take off and do certain things. But I think that the light shining on it is great because, people do need to find, I would say, an astrologer or a therapeutic astrologer like yourself that they can go to and say, hey, listen, I'm having some issues. I'm having some things that I need to talk to you about, maybe to help me, make an adjustment and a shift, because these are the things that I've been dealing with, that I've been holding on to. And, and I think that what you do is extremely important. I've always thought that you are very, very interesting and very powerful astrologer because you push the needle. And one of the things you do is when you push that needle, you are on the forefront of this particular atmosphere in therapeutic astrology. And I think that what you're doing is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, I got your first book, the first book for me was Therapeutic Astrology, which you said now is Planets in Therapy. And I had it when it was like a greenish kind of shiny, and I had that copy back then. And I'm telling you, man, I've been seeing the articles in the Mountain Astrologer, just everything that you've been doing, the books that you've been putting out, and the lectures. And I have a few of your old tapes, a couple of tapes of some old lectures you've done. And I think that, man, what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal. So I definitely had to, bring you in and talk to us about this therapeutic phenomenon that you are in, and how it's really, really, really expanding and pushing the needle in astrology.
I really appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. And, this latest book, Astrology as a Therapeutic Art, focuses on relationships. The subtitle is Healing Human Relationships. And I think this is an area that is of importance for everyone, because we all want to enhance our interactions with our loved ones, our friends, our family, our neighbors, our coworkers, everyone in our lives. And astrology gives so much information about the interpersonal dynamics and can be so helpful in helping us have more harmonious and fulfilling relationships. That alone would make astrology of infinite value in our current world, where relationships are often so stressed and families are so stressed. So I'm just really glad that astrology can be a constructive force in our world, and I really appreciate your appreciation of the writings. It means a lot to me.
And so when you are looking at the relationship aspect of this, are you using a composite chart, or how are you looking at the relationships?
No, in fact, it's been years since I've done a composite chart. Of course, I look at synastry, but what I do is I look at the individual chart, what's going on in the individual chart. If I'm working with a couple, I have them listen to each other's chart analysis. In other words, here's what's going on for your husband or your wife, so that they can understand how that person is growing or where they are stressed. And so that understanding of the other as well as of oneself is so valuable for people to realize, the person I live with, they're not the same as me. They have their own roadmap. They have their own schedule of development, and we have to find a way to coordinate them so that both people can unfold themselves the way they need to, and we accept it, we tolerate it, we celebrate it. We don't try and make the other person like us. And so that's how I work these days. Of course, I do the chart comparison and the synastry, but first I want to get this understanding of the individual charts, and what are the things going on. So somebody's having Saturn on their sun, and they're working all the time, and they're not available so much. They're not as affectionate. They're preoccupied. Well, it helps if I understand, honey, you got to do that work right now. That's where your focus is. Or someone has Pluto transiting on their descendant, and they suddenly perceive their partner very differently, or they start having interactions with people who embody that Pluto archetype very strongly. It really helps to understand astrologically what's going on. So anyway, the book details many examples of people gaining those understandings, dealing with conflicts with their children, dealing with their partner's substance abuse or alcoholism, different workplace challenges that affect a marriage or a relationship or a family, and so forth.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So tell us a little bit about what do you have going on right now? How can we get in contact with you? Also, how can our listeners get copies of your book? And also, if somebody's listening and they want to say, hey, you know what, I do want to see somebody and get this therapeutic experience, There's a lot of things I've been dealing with, issues, family dynamics, relationships, siblings situations, stuff that happened in the past that I'm still holding on and struggling with. How could they set something up with you?
Oh, sure. Thanks for asking that. My website is www.dawnmountain.com, DAWN, dawnmountain.com. My 24-hour voicemail number is 510-594-4329. And my email address is gbogart7, numeral 7, at sbcglobal.net. And those are all ways you can contact me. In terms of what I have going on, I've been teaching at Sonoma State University for a long time, and I'm on a break from that for the next 4 months. And basically I have my therapy and astrological practice going on, and then more writing. And then I'm a jazz musician, so I'm playing music a lot, and growing a nice garden, and walking a 70-pound husky, and so forth. So that's a little bit.
What instrument do you play?
I play guitar, and I'm also learning bass, just to be available on a stand-in basis. But I'm a guitarist from my whole life.
All right, that's pretty cool. You have any recordings that you put out, any like live albums or anything like that?
Oh no, I'm not that accomplished. I just play in a local band. It's just for fun, but no recordings at this time. But I appreciate your asking about that. No, but it's mainly the books that I'm promoting, and the information is all on dawnmountain.com. The books are available in print or electronic versions through all your usual outlets such as Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Powell's, and also direct from the publishers. The publishers include Routledge Press for my dream books, Inner Traditions, Ibis Press has published Planets in Therapy and Astrology's Higher Octaves. Wessex Astrologer in England published Astrology as a Therapeutic Art. And they also published a book that is little known that you may not have heard of, and it's called Astrology and Meditation, The Fearless Contemplation of Change. And that book was published right after 9/11. It really is the essence of my approach to astrology, which is it emphasizes a quiet mind. You know, we say, what is the best technique in astrology? To me, the most powerful technique is to approach the study of astrology with a quiet, meditative consciousness that considers, what is the universe asking for? What is the highest intention of this? Why did I write a chart with this placement? What's the highest potential unfolding of this? And how can I live that? And to approach it in a contemplative way. This yields so many insights, and anyone can do this. You just have to get past the fear-based interpretations of the past that looked at Saturn and Mars as malefics. So I like to look at Saturn and Mars as stressors, not as malefics. Stressors are something that everybody faces, but we can develop a more and more intelligent, adaptive approach to stressors. This is what I describe in the latest book, Astrology as a Therapeutic Art. And if we avoid some of the dysfunctional approaches, the Neptunian approaches to challenges, such as inertia, not seeking help, self-pity, addictions, inflated or deflated thinking, and so forth. If we get past those, we can adapt well to the stresses of Saturn and Mars and other planets.
Man, I think that's wonderful, man. Definitely go and get his books, read his articles on the site. He's done a great work. Like I said, looking at astrology from his lens, it's very, very interesting, you learn so much. It's almost like he takes the chart and he gives it another layer beneath what those who study astrology would see. When you get into the psychological dynamic in that realm, therapeutic, it's absolutely phenomenal. I've studied a lot of stuff from Noel Till as well. So, Noel Till was also on that therapeutic psychological stuff as well. But you have a different spin on yours. You have a different way of how you are really laying this out, and it's really, really phenomenal. So we definitely want to give you your flowers and tell you thank you, because we appreciate the time, the years of study, the years of going to school and getting your all of your degrees and everything that you've been getting, and then also coming up with these books that can help not only just the astrologer, but even anybody who wants to know more about themselves or get a sense of self-awareness, self-identity. And I think that your approach should definitely be celebrated, because you, like I said, you're pushing the needle, and I think that, you were one of my favorites, because from back when I was learning astrology, my teacher always told me, hey, man, you got to get with Greg Bogart. He has a great thing on psychology. And as you do readings, the more readings you do, the more you interact with people, you realize how important it is to have that information, to know how to counsel people, how to talk to people about issues that they're having. It's not just about, hey, am I going to get married, or when am I going to get a job, but about some real core issues that everybody deals with every day. So I think that to have that ability to do that is definitely special. And we just wanted to say thank you for your input and your contribution to astrology.
Well, I thank you from my heart for saying that. Thank you so much.
And are you speaking anywhere this year? Are you going to any conferences or anything like that? Or?
Well, I have a few things going on, and I really appreciate your asking that. So I can say that on the 31st of August, which is a week from next Saturday, this coming Saturday, I'm talking to the Astrological Association of Great Britain conference, and that's an online as well as live conference. And so I'm talking on astrology, Jung astrology and dreams. And then after that, I'm talking for the ISAR Star Club on the 13th of October. And my topic is Astrology's Higher Octaves, where I discuss 6 areas of astrological practice: the astrology of daily life, therapeutic astrology, astrology of human relationships, astrology and dreams, astrology and vocational counseling, so vocational astrology, and then the connection of astrology and music. Those are great areas of interest for me. So that's the 13th of October. Then I'm talking to the Sacramento NCGR group on the 27th of October. And I realized after the fact that I was speaking like a week or two before the election, which is crazy. So I changed my topic, and it's now called Pre-Election Astrological Soul Search. And so I'm not a great mundane astrologer commenting on social trends and politics, but I'm going to do something along those lines since everybody is thinking about the election right before that happens. And then on the 16th of November, I'm speaking to the San Diego NCGR group on astrology as a therapeutic art, healing human relationships. And, really in all of these talks, I'm talking about process work, not just thinking of astrology as describing things that happen to us, but processes of evolution that on a daily basis we can embrace with tenacious determination and energy and zest. So those are the upcoming talks I have. I look forward to conferences in the coming year, but that's what I've got through the rest of this year. And yeah, go ahead, please.
The conference you're doing for the Astrological Association of Britain, you're going to London, or are you doing it just?
No, I'm doing it from my seat here in Berkeley, California.
Okay. Well, I went last year. It was phenomenal. I actually went to that conference last year.
It is a great conference.
Yes.
I would love to go back in person.
Yeah.
When I went there the first time, it was 2001, and 9/11 happened like a few days after the conference while I was still in Great Britain. That was memorable.
Yeah. So, we thank you, Mr. Bogart, for your dedication, your great confidence to take the stand, to stand up and say, I'm going to go through the threshold and I'm going to trailblaze this particular identity and this particular lane in astrology that has been totally phenomenal. Those of you that are listening to this podcast, we are giving Mr. Bogart his flowers. We honor him for such a great accomplishment that he's done, and for his legacy, and for him pushing the needle in astrology. We look forward to more works, more knowledge, more input into this dynamic. I think that what he has done has been phenomenal thus far, and we had to have him on here to say thank you. Those of you, please follow him, connect with him through his website, and get on his mailing list so that you can stay connected to him and begin to understand your planets in therapy and how astrology from within can give you that ability to see it in a therapeutic lens. I think that it's amazing when you look at astrology from that perspective, and I think so many of us, as we said, astrology has become so commercial these days that when you get into what you do, it really brings it home. It really brings it to a place where you can really help a lot of people out. And I know you've helped many people out over the years. And it's just amazing that you were able to do what you have done. And we just wanted to celebrate you.
Thank you for a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much. And also, Mr. Bogart, we always like to tell our guests this one thing. We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's great.